We did a video about what would happen if Ghidorah had entered the How to Train Your Dragon universe. Well, what would happen if Godzilla himself entered the universe? Godzilla is very powerful, and I guess in some ways you can say he, in fact, is a dragon himself. I think for the most part, he would mind his own business, and then he would get a bunch of people hunting him down after they've sighted him once. Usually the only reason Godzilla would have any reason at all to board land. First thing to note is the only reason Godzilla would have any reason whatsoever to go upon land is if he feels threatened. He spends most of his time in the water, and only goes upon land if there is a kaiju strong enough or powerful enough or just as big as he is enough to pose a threat. Otherwise, he wouldn't really give a flying fish. The world wouldn't be any different than the ancient world that he came from before humans were even a thing. Many years ago, dinosaurs roamed the earth and Godzilla was still doing his thing, still talking to other kaiju as well. Now, if the dinosaurs were as big as the Empire State Building or something of the sort, then Godzilla would have a reason to feel threatened. After all, bigger creatures means more competition for food and territory. Godzilla would essentially become the Red Death, but a much more introverted version of it. Red Death, in a sense, was her own Godzilla. The only difference being that she was lulling dragons to her to sacrifice whatever they got so that she could eat, and if they did not bring enough food, well, they would become a meal themselves. Godzilla didn't do all of that. Ghidorah did. Godzilla just wanted peace and quiet and for everyone to fall in line. Therefore, Toothless and friends would be quite okay. That is until something very large and aggressive enters his territory that he has to put down, like the Bewildebeest from How to Train Your Dragon. You're probably wondering if Godzilla would just go ahead and attack another creature just because it's big. No, I'm sure there were a lot of other sizable kaiju back in the day. Godzilla's main issue is whether or not they're a threat, and surely if he sees something big like this creature, he's going to try to assess whether or not it is actually dangerous. Just like with the other kaiju, he will go up to it once it's on his radar. Once he goes up to the creature and stares it down, commanding it to fall in line and to be subdued, if it backs down, there probably won't be an issue. If it doesn't back down, then Godzilla and that thing has a problem. I feel like Godzilla would use his intimidation tactic first before attacking, depending on what the creature is. If he doesn't know what it is, then he would simply try to intimidate it or warn it to get off of his territory. If the creature doesn't listen, then Godzilla will go in for the attack. Notice that Godzilla has a habit of roaring when he meets another kaiju before doing anything else. That is his way of saying, no doubt Hiccup and his friends would also try to befriend Godzilla. Godzilla isn't about being friends with humans, he really doesn't care. But just like there were other villains that tried to capture legendary dragons, in How to Train Your Dragon 2, there no doubt will be villains that try to capture Godzilla, and that won't end too well. And if they piss Godzilla off, he's gonna turn on everyone. Now, the question is whether or not Toothless and Hiccup would see Godzilla as a bad guy. After all, Godzilla does still expect, especially larger kaiju, to fall in line. Kind of like what the Red Death was doing with the other dragons, even though she was literally just using them because they were getting eaten and they were bringing food to her. She was essentially their queen. Godzilla is the king of the monsters. And as we've seen in the King of the Monsters ending, all the kaiju bow down to him. Hiccup and his friends may not be okay with this, or maybe they will. It depends on how Godzilla chooses to rule. If he does what he did in Godzilla King of the Monsters at the ending, then everyone will be fine. Step in line, you won't get hurt. After all, we saw something similar in effect in How to Train Your Dragon 2 with the Bewildebeest and all the dragons who basically saw him as their king. The dragons worshipped him, the dragons respected him, he wasn't trying to eat them, everyone fell in line, they listened, except for the baby dragons, of course. This guy was the Mufasa of the dragon world, and essentially that's what Godzilla would be, which I understand would be a problem if the Bewildebeest was still alive and Godzilla was in this universe. The Bewildebeest is huge, but not not as large as Godzilla, but he also has those mighty tusks. This guy is basically Behemoth from Godzilla King of the Monsters. You respect him and you respect all dragons, and he will tolerate you. Godzilla may not be okay with this, since this bewilderbeast is operating on his own or within his own jurisdiction, just like Kong does Skull Island. Godzilla may see this as a sign of treason and decide to fix that section of what he deems to be a broken hierarchy, especially after what happened with Ghidorah. I don't think Godzilla is going to be as lenient with some other big creature controlling other creatures that have powers. In that world, Godzilla would learn really quickly about the skills of all the dragons. With them being as numerous as they are, Godzilla would certainly have a problem with some larger dragon, almost as big as he is, having an army like that behind his back. He would definitely try to subdue the bewilderbeast. And he would have an issue with any other large creatures that have powers and big old tusks like that and weapons that don't listen to him directly. So everyone is subservient in Godzilla King of the Monsters at the end of the movie. If the dragons fight back, they're dead.
You're fired. And in case your ears are fucked, get the fuck out! And the next person I see juggling, tap dancing, or baton twirling, or doing any other circus-like tricks will join him, all right? One strike policy applies.
In other news, there would be trainers trying to capture Godzilla and they would all fail. Unless, of course, somebody during that time comes up with something similar to the Oxygen Destroyer. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. This has been Ulturi. You ask, we answer.